I forgot how bad my voice is going to be today because I've been a little raspy.
Allergy?
Yeah, I think I hope it's always towards the end of the day primarily. So I'm assuming it's like when the medicine's wearing off.
Gotcha.
Since I've been outside more. So like raspy, blowing my nose. And I was so worried it was going to get in the way of preaching. So I'm so glad it wasn't on the live stream.
Mm-hmm.
But I put a cough drop in before I was going to preach in the second service. And I forgot I had it in when I walked up on stage. So I looked over the railing and there was a box of tissues. Spit out in the tissue and then I left it there. And I think it's still there because I forgot to go back for it.
Nice.
But it wasn't on the video, so no one saw me do it while Deb was finishing
Actually,
scripture.
Right behind the little railing there, there's a whole bag that...
I saw it was like a yellow bag of Halls.
Yeah, Max Shock popped it behind there.
Yeah.
And it's been super helpful because I'll just be like, yes.
Yeah.
I'll take one of those.
For those that don't know, we are with Aaron Adriano once again, and we are in an official super fancy music studio of his. Super fancy. Which it is.
It is not. Dude.
You want to see my studio at my house? You've played on my piano.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. No, it is phenomenal, and there's a bunch of things to admire and look at, including a didgeridoo.
Yeah.
Where did you get that from?
That's from Australia.
Did you go to Australia?
No, I didn't go to Australia. My dad did, but he picked it up for me when I was going to college.
That's awesome.
It's considered like one of the oldest instruments.
Really?
Well, it's just a stick. I mean, there's not much to it. Like, so basically, for those that don't know, a didgeridoo is a piece of wood. Usually, in this case, it's eucalyptus. They put beeswax on the tip to create a seal with your lips, and then you just kind of blow a raspberry into it, sort of, and then it makes the sound. And there's like a whole story behind it too, where someone was going out and they were looking for firewood, and they picked up a log that was lighter than all the other logs, and he looked in and it was hollowed out by termites, and if you look in, that actually was hollowed out by termites too. So they did that one as naturally as possible. So the inside's hollowed out, and then the person didn't want to throw the log on the fire with all these termites in it, so he got beeswax and then put it on the edge of it and blew into it, and
to try and blow the termites out. Okay.
And their lore, the termites flew out and became the stars in the sky. So it's really, I like that because it shows how music can kind of open your eyes. I mean, obviously the stars were there, you know.
Yes, we are not altering the creation story on this podcast, but there are things we can learn from other stories. So,
but in this case, they he looked up and I guess saw the stars, and it's just kind of neat how eye-opening music can be. So that's one of the reasons I have that instrument.
So the past 2 weeks,
does everything go well?
Yeah, everything went fine. The week and a half leading up to my first Sunday, there were so many things that didn't go as planned. It was almost comical by the end of it, because things that like maybe once a year happen or whatever were just all happening in 1 week. And so at the end, I was just like more excited for it, because then I could see God provide and work through it, versus getting frustrated by all the things. So, and one of those things was me trying to lead worship, and we were able to get a crew together. I'm very grateful for all of them. And so we only did 3 songs because of those circumstances, and we had them play a recording during offering so people could just sit, and it was Be Thou My Vision, like a nice fancy YouTube. Did that, and then like the morning of we came to do our sound check and play through the songs, and the sound person had slept in, and we're like 15 minutes late, which is fine on a normal day. Like, because sound check, we give a 15-minute spot, but it like 3-4 minutes and we're done and we can move on usually. But of course, on this morning, everything had been reset, so all the instruments had to be adjusted. And then with our in-ear monitors, everything had been reset, and some of the things had been renamed. So even though people in the band like know how to adjust their own thing, with things being renamed, we didn't know what was doing what.
Yeah.
And so that took up a good amount of time. But I didn't let it get to me. I literally just sat down. I was like, you guys got this. I'm going to work on the sermon more and when everything's functioning, then we'll practice through the songs. Because that first week I ended up doing, I would consider 2 different sermons for the 2 different services, which I've never done before because I struggle enough with making one. and so to do 2 was not ideal. But the night before, I really felt like God was pushing me to do it. And I was like, okay, you'll provide the time, you'll provide the differences and whatever. And so, like, for those that are already now familiar with the second service version, where I talk about me doing the marathon and this like very heavy focus of like stripping off the things that are holding us back and focusing our eyes on Jesus. The first service didn't even mention my marathon, didn't even mention any of the runners I talk about in the second service, and we talked a little bit, focused more on the perseverance aspect, and not taking for granted how holy God is and that he's allowing us to be a part of what he's doing. And so same scripture and both running illustrations or stories or whatever, but very, very different. So I literally had 2 transcripts laid out and was, oh gosh, don't tell Helen. But since I had heard the mission moment in the first service, I was touching up the last couple of paragraphs. I already had the draft, but I was touching up the last couple of paragraphs on my iPad in the second service during the mission moment. And so when you see me get up there, I'm using the physical paper for the first like 3/4 of it. And then I switched to the iPad for the part that I had retouched up to close it out. But God provided every minute and moment needed for it, and I was just so blessed by it, and just so thankful for the message to me, but also that it was hopefully fruitful for somebody else. And so the first week was intense, to say the least. And then recovery, like I just felt like the next week I needed 2-3 days of mental recovery from all of it.
I don't know. I feel like I saw some new people there too.
There were a handful of new people. I knew like younger people.
Yeah.
Met, I believe it was Zach and Pat, and Zach's mother was in town, and so they decided to take her out to church for a good time, and it was lovely meeting them. And then I got to meet Matt and Jordan, who are a part of, I believe it's called Child Evangelism Ministries. People might more know them as the Good News Club. Can go around to other churches or to schools, and they host like child's programming and stuff. And so they were visiting and wanted to talk to me. They're starting stuff up in, I believe, a Collingswood Elementary School, and they're looking for some volunteers. So if anyone listening to this would be interested, would love to get you in contact with them. It's a great ministry. I had Good News Club in my church, like when we had, I think Collingswood had like a Wednesday night dinners thing. So they would come together for dinner and then split up into like Bible study type things. And so my church did that on Tuesday nights growing up, and Good News Club ran our children's section. And so from like 1st grade to 6th grade, I had the Schreffners, who I heard just retired like 3 years ago, and they were old when I was a kid. And I always used to call them the Schreffinator. So it's nice to hear that ministry is still around and still active in our area. But yeah, so we had some nice new faces in, and we're getting a couple like regular new faces in both services. We have some nice regular new faces, which is really encouraging. And yeah, but I'm curious, Aaron, on the topic of Sabbath, what does that look like for you and Heather?
That can be tough. I'm here on Sunday. I'm at the church on Sundays.
Yeah.
Right? But as far as Sabbath, where I find time, I would say probably Saturdays. I mean, yes, we still do the band practice in the morning, but afterward it gives us time to kind of go out, and a lot of times we'll just hang around Collingswood. Sometimes we'll get we'll go to India, because that place is awesome.
India, one of the many famous Italian restaurants,
obviously,
in Collingswood.
Yep, their cheesesteaks are incredible. No, actually, their food is phenomenal. Or over even to the Thai basil place, which if nobody's tried that out, do that because that's really good.
And their lunch specials are cheap. Like
yeah.
you don't walk away stuffed, but you're not hungry, and it's like 12, 13 bucks.
And you feel good on that stuff. A lot of times, like I can't just eat Italian food all the time. Otherwise, it's like I'll have a heart attack. But
a happy heart.
I don't know. Sometimes it's a bit heavy. But with that, it'll be like a coconut and lime chicken soup type of thing, which I forget what it was called. And if I try to say the word, I'm just going to butcher it. But it's delicious. And then of course their red curry, if you like spicy stuff, is really good. Heather tends to get the masamans, which is like a potato and chicken cashew thing. It's really good. But yeah, no, that just Collingswood has a lot of really awesome stuff. So we tend to either walk around there or head to Sam's Club.
Yeah, well, it's nice because it's out of the rhythm for you two through the week, through the chaos of teaching in the school, teaching at home, music lessons, all that kind of stuff, to just get time with each other and to take that break. And
because like Heather's in the mornings, she's teaching in the school, and then like I'm doing a lot of like music, sound, all that stuff here in the mornings, and then when she comes back, I'm gone because I teach nights. It's a lot of like, hey, how you doing? Bye. Or I'll call her on my way to work and she's coming back from work. And so we don't get a lot of time to, I get out. Sometimes it'll be early, but a lot of times it'll be like 8, 9 o'clock. Just chill for a bit. I would say Saturday is our closest that we can get to a time where we can just be and kind of do the things we want to do. Yeah. You know, and then now lately it's been kind of after the whole wedding thing, just spring cleaning, getting rid of things. Yeah. Actually having the driveway finished is super helpful because just carting things down it, I'm not like tripping over rocks.
Yeah, that's a testimony itself. Can you share that story?
Oh, yeah.
What happened?
So, the other day, I'm in here working, and somebody knocks on the door, which we get a lot of.
Whoa! I'm gonna give a little more context for you, just as a person that's been visiting you for years. Is that 4 years their driveway has been in very rough condition, even if you're not talking about like the flat part where the cars are, even though I think there was like a pothole or something there. But just the transition from the street to the sidewalk was just a steep, I would say like 70-degree angle.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but it was bad,
it was very, very steep to the point that with our Subaru that has like 12-inch clearance, we still had to go very slow to go up the driveway. And so that's what they had been dealing with. For how long have you been in this house?
I have 2017.
It's like 7 years.
Oh geez,
it's been that long. Yeah, so 7 years you've been dealing with this driveway. Okay, and then what happened the other day?
So a guy knocked on the door. I looked through the peephole thing, and I mean, I knew it was a solicitor. He had the paving company, and I was just like, ugh. You know, so I opened up the door thinking I was going to get bombarded with a bunch of stuff, and he was like, hey, we ended up with new asphalt. We're looking to just repave stuff, try to get rid of it. I can give you a quote real quick if you want. And I was like, let me call my wife before I go and say yeah. I don't know. It's everything we get quoted is just a lot. So anyway, the guy comes up, and I was like, yeah, I'll call him back. And I'm like, you know what? Yeah, let's see what you got. If you're right down the street, you know, come give me a quote. That'd be awesome. So he comes back, he measures it, and he's like, usually for this type of work, we would do 8,000, which is better than I've ever gotten as far as quotes are concerned. Yeah. He's like, but we'll do it for 4. Actually, you know, we'll do it for 3. So I was just like, yes. And I shook his hand right there. And then an hour later, somebody comes with a backhoe and started tearing up the driveway. So I'm out there like, I didn't even sign anything yet. Like, are we cool with this? Because I don't want to be like, and I want to make sure that we're, you know, with a price that was agreed on. So I called the guy and I was like, hey, is there any way I could like, you know, get this on writing? And he's like, yeah, man, don't worry about it. We got you. So he showed up. He actually showed up after it was done and everything was good. Like it was done within probably about 2 hours.
Wow.
Yeah. Maybe longer than that. But I called you. I called Pastor Scott. I was like, yo, this is wild. Yeah. It was definitely like a God moment because it's something we've been praying on because our driveway was terrible.
And I just tested it out today with our sedan, and we were able to clear with no issue.
That's awesome.
And it's nice. But I forgot my skateboard to test it out. I love fresh asphalt.
Skateboard.
My skateboard. Why not?
What? You wreck yourself and all of a sudden, like, yeah, no, we're good.
Then what? Then I'm hurt. So what?
Then I know you. You're very litigious. He'll soon. No, I'm just kidding. I'm 100. No, but it's yeah. I was actually thinking that just get my rollerblades on, just woo. But I haven't rollerbladed in like a million years, so I'd probably I'd wreck my own self.
I think you mentioned the lowest quote you'd gotten before was like 15,000.
Yeah.
So if you do math,
I went to music school.
It's numbers.
Yeah, I know.
What is that math?
What percentages?
Yeah.
Off of like how much? Dude, don't ask me to do this. I'd have to get a calculator, which
3 times 5. So it was 20% of the lowest quote.
Yeah, actually that would be dead on. Yeah.
That you got. And so for me, when I shared it at Young Adults the other week as a testimony, for me the biggest takeaway from that was how often we view certain financial goals for us or for our family or for whatever it might be, and we think that we need to be the ones to make it happen, and therefore if it feels out of reach, we need to take more hours of work, we need to get a side hustle, we need to start selling some of our prized family artifacts that might actually be worth something or whatever it might be. But instead of thinking of how we can get to that price point or whatever it might be, like trusting that God can provide it if he deems it necessary, right? We can survive with a poorly made driveway. I'm not saying that this is Aaron and Heather wouldn't survive without the driveway and therefore God provided a need. It's very much a blessing, but we have these certain things, and if we continue to stay faithful to him, the blessings that he gives us, instead of providing, he didn't drop $12,000 into your bank account randomly and you're like, did someone think that I was a prince that needed a money or whatever from an email scam and they sent it to my bank account instead? But instead being able to provide a way that price is brought down 80% down for something that normally there aren't discounts for because like the material itself, let alone all the labor and the machinery and all that goes into it. And so just like God providing in something that I know was a stressor for such a long time, and to be able to alleviate you too from that stressor, but also the financial.
It's just been it's those types of housing things, like certain things I can do myself. I'm usually pretty good at tearing things up and then eventually building it back up for
I was about to say, how many projects do you have right now?
So I have to paint that.
The garage
is a big one. I need to knock out. It's a window area that I'm putting a French door in instead of windows. I know the structure. Everybody's going to talk about it. It's a garage. There's nothing like too intense about this garage. So yeah, it would be that. Let's see. In here, it's going to be retiling the bathroom is another one. Kitchen, we have to tear out all of the wallpaper, and then we want to repaint and get rid of the soffit above the sink. Our office, that one is a work in progress. So that one is just sealing. What are they called? The borders. We actually kind of painted it. The whole thing's done. It's just moving stuff out of there right now. So anytime something pops up, I'm usually just on it and then I do it. I think that's it for interior. Exterior, we need to work on our landscaping, which has been just attacking it every day until it goes away. And windows and siding. So yeah, a lot of stuff. Oh, and we need new air conditioner and heater. So those are the other.
So I know, so that's like 7 house projects, but do you have any other projects that you're working on? Like,
I'm stopping doing a lot of that stuff,
okay,
like decorative things.
Yeah.
Mostly because I've got enough to do that actually has to get done.
Yeah.
I am writing a piano teaching book because I'm tired of certain things. That there's a musical I've been writing, of course, along with all the other music that I have to do, so I don't always get a chance to just sit there and do that. But yeah.
That's really awesome.
Yeah, that's not even house related. That's just other projects that I'm.
And that kind of ties to like in the sermon talking about like the backup work list. Like when we find time, then here's all the extra work that we want to get done on top of our normal day-to-day work, but still being intentional about that Sabbath.
So you talked about Sabbath and how that looks like for you and Rebecca. How did you figure out what it looked like for you and your family?
No, it was very tough because it's, like I said in the sermon, of just this weird balance of like, we don't have the infinite rules, right? But then it almost feels so vague and ambiguous that it's hard to like settle in on something specific. And so one of the things, well, first off, in regards to rules, I mentioned very briefly some of them, but I share it with my kids every time I talk to kids about different laws and Sabbath rules. Shabulb. Everyone should YouTube Shabulb, Shabbulb. It is a Sabbath light bulb, because you are not allowed to ignite fire, and they include turning on lights as that electricity, and you are not allowed to extinguish either. So back in the day, people would light the candles before Sabbath started, and they'd let the candles run till it ends. Or if they wanted to extinguish the candles, but not extinguish the candles because they're not allowed, they'd open a window and let the wind do the job. And I was like, I'm pretty sure opening a window is more work than just.
Yeah, right. But
it's what they deemed was necessary. And so with the Shabulb, they had this amazing commercial about how, like, aren't you tired of, if you have a light bulb on at the beginning of Sabbath, how then your room is so bright, and if you have it in the bedroom, you can't go to sleep because you can't turn the light off and the light's on. And so that can lead to dangerous circumstances because the guy he's so restless, he throws his shirt over the lamp to cover up the light so that he could go to sleep at night. And then I forget what other hijinks they have. And the way it works is the bulb, it's LED based in the base of it, and it has like 6 holes that the light shines through, and then it comes out of the bulb. And there's a little lever that it will put a plate to cover those 6 holes. So you're not turning off the light, you're just making it so it doesn't actually leave the light bulb, even though it's still on. So you're not extinguishing.
Okay.
And so for $20 on Amazon, I forget if you get 1 or 2 for that, you can get your own Shabulb.
That is wild.
Yeah. So we could get bogged down in all of these rules and like the time, right? Shabbat, which is the Jewish, the Hebrew for Sabbath, is traditionally Friday night at sundown to Saturday night at sundown. And that's the time frame. And so we were trying to figure out what day works for us, because Sunday ain't it. As I talked about in the sermon, we settled on Friday, and we just wanted to do it waking up to going to sleep, because it just didn't make sense for us in our life schedule with the kids and all that to do it another way. Mm-hmm. And so what we did, and I would implore families that maybe don't have something set already, is Rebecca and I, we just sat down and said, okay, what are the do's and what are the don'ts that we want for our Sabbath? And so we said don'ts. We don't want cell phone usage, essentially. Like, we'll check our phones maybe twice in the day, see if there's an emergency, and we'll do phone calls. We'll do like actual human interaction. But everything else we put aside so we can just be present in the moment with the kids and and not get distracted by that. So we put phones aside. Second don't is we don't talk shop. We don't talk church stuff. And it doesn't mean we don't talk about God. It doesn't mean we don't talk about theology, but we don't talk about the life of ministry. We don't talk about theological debates that people are having specifically in the church, that kind of thing. And I think there was one more don't, but I can't remember. And then for the do's, we want to do one intentional like home cooked meal, which we cook almost every single day, but we want to like do it together and actually cook together or whatever it might be. Sit and just be intentional about doing that. We try to gather when the chance allows with friends outside of the church or even friends within the church. But if they're within the church, we tell them no shop talk. If we're hanging out on Friday, We're not talking church stuff right now.
Yeah.
Try to enjoy relationships for relationship's sake. We can just be in that moment in relationship with them. And also make sure that we have a Bible time together or separate, but that like we get personal devotional time with God. And it's not for sermon prep. It's not for lesson prep. It's just for me and my relationship with God, Rebecca and her relationship with God, and sometimes we work on that together. And it's been beautiful. It's been so helpful. And it's helped me. It's so weird because I was always in the thing of like there's so much work to do constantly that taking a day off seemed ridiculous. And so since then, I've been able to truly rest on Fridays, like not like I said in the sermon about like working in my head and like, oh, I could do this, like, and I can put together 80% of a sermon just in my head before anything touches a paper. So I could get rid of that aspect of it. And then on the other 6 days, I don't feel bad about working really hard, working at nights, doing meetings, doing whatever it might be, and feeling like I'm not ignoring the family, but not as around as I'd like to be with the family. I don't feel as bad about that because I know Sabbath is coming and I will have that intentional time with the family. And so if like the past few weeks with Scott gone and a little extras on my plate and the schedule's even busier than normal, I don't feel bad about that because I know, and Rebecca knows, and so we're both kind of more at ease. There's not that tension of that where, because Sabbath is coming and Friday's coming, and so it's been really, really good. And that's where, like, on my heart, I've talked to so many people privately, in young adults, specifically as they're trying to find what their rhythm looks like as they're entering into the workforce and settling into marriages, settling into new seasons of life, of like being intentional with making that Sabbath. God wants this for the masses because of I've just seen such a great need for it. And he put the sermon on my heart. As this was another New Room conference one where like last September, and I was like, but I haven't even like lived it in a way that I've felt the holiness, the true holiness of Sabbath. And so I was like, I should practice it before I preach it just a little bit. And therefore then like, I just feel like there's more of an enthusiasm to it because I've experienced that holiness. And I'd highly recommend book recommendation. Rebecca was actually mad at me. Why didn't you recommend any books? And I was like, there was already so much information to absorb. I'll save it for the podcast. Submersive Sabbath, The Surprising Power of Rest in a Nonstop World by A.J. Swoboda. And he was one of the ones that I quoted, and it is phenomenal. And it breaks it up and goes really deep into how Sabbath is, like I talked, I did very small summaries of certain sections of the book. And so like his Sabbath for Us section is Sabbath in time, Sabbath in work, Sabbath in health. Then he goes into Sabbath for others, Sabbath for relationships, the economy, technology, how Sabbath also serves the marginalized. And then he talks about how Sabbath is for creation, and then Sabbath for worship, how it's for witness, for worship, for discipleship. It really, really was a beautiful book. I'm stoked about it. I'm excited. Any closing thoughts or questions, Aaron, as we depart?
Yeah, I think I should definitely put more thought into our Sabbath, mine and Heather's. I don't know, especially, and Heather's had this kind of on her heart where, and so have I, we are so immersed with what we're doing work-wise and making sure that we have this, and that, and all this other stuff is done, that we don't even have time, not just for ourselves, but even for friends, you know, so it's tough to get out and do that kind of stuff. So every once in a while we'll like go out with people from the church and we'll go to India because that place is awesome. So yeah, honestly, next Saturday, well, yeah, I'm going to be working with the kids on Saturday.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry about that because I know that's cutting into your other set.
No, it's fine.
Friday. But
No.
yeah, yeah, I guess we should actually really look, especially since summer's coming, but it's still, I work every day. Like I have times throughout the day where I have downtime, but I mean, if I were to like add that all together, that could equal a day. But, especially with what we do, but still, again, in the morning, then I do other stuff. So that's why we try to keep, you know what? I'm doing it. Saturday's it. So
absolutely. And that's the thing where like we have rest through the week, and like most people, you come home and then you have a couple hours maybe after the kids are down or whatever it might be. But I find that the smaller pockets, it's harder to be intentional. It's just like whatever you crave in that moment after the exhaustion of the day. And so it's like so much easier to do couch, Netflix, whatever snack is available that you're craving. And that's like the default versus like a more intentional time. And that's where having that day, that time allows for more intentionality. And like you just mentioned, you're like, oh, sorry about the kids because we're going to practice with our youth on Friday and I'm going to be helping with that. And that's an exception. That's not a regular thing for Fridays. And so that's where like we don't want the legality of it to stop us from doing good on our Sabbath. And so it's that balance. And that's where, as listeners, I hope that you guys pray for Aaron and Heather as they try to find that rhythm and whatever that can look more like for them, especially in the summer season as Heather gets out of school, be a good time to set in that rhythm, but also be in prayer for your family, even if you already have some specific Sabbath things in set. If there's anything new that God wants for that day for you, like a lot of the quotes, which I was very surprised in Jewish and in Christians as they talk about Sabbath and literature and stuff like that, of like it being kind of a taste of heaven, it being a taste of the world to come when Jesus comes back and we're new heaven and earth, of like, this is what eternity can be like, or just a taste of what it can be like. And so just resting in the presence of God and the blessings he's provided and all of those things is, we have a God that wants that for us and created us to have that. And we're like, yeah, that sounds great, God, but instead we'd rather work ourselves to the bone. And so, accept the gift.
That's the thing. It's not even, it's crazy how that comes to be, because it's not even a lot of our choice.
Yeah.
It's become a societal thing, and then it's almost society's choice that you have to work 7 days a week.
And that's where I love that. And I feel like I had so many good quotes, but they just kind of get mixed into the whole message and it's harder to chew on them. One of them was something to the effect of like, we don't need to work to please God. And yet our society puts so much emphasis on our work, what we create, what we produce, all of that stuff, all the things we strive for. And so if like, we don't need to do that to please God, why do we put as Christians such a heavy emphasis on that as well? And then it says, but we rest because God is pleased with us. And it's like, he's already happy with me. And this is a way to show that I trust and that I believe that he's satisfied with what I've done through the rest of the week and that he wants me to just enjoy being with him. I'll close it out at that.
That's an awesome way to think about that, actually.
Because Rebecca is in the car with the boys in the driveway,
right,
and they're fussy and ready to go. But thank you so much.
Well, that's our conversation for today. But that doesn't mean the conversation is over. We'd love to hear your thoughts on these topics as well. To ask a question about anything we've discussed in this episode, or to join the conversation, you can head over to fumccollingswood.org/podcast. Thanks for being part of this conversation.